Hey guys, this is Torna. Today we're going to be talking about color identities in Magic the Gathering. I'm going to be starting a new series, Magic 101, going through all the different color identities. Our first step here to kind of give you guys an introduction into what each color combination does, what each color does best, kind of going through a whole bunch of different information there. So aim here and the purpose of the video is basically introduce the idea of color identities, explain briefly what each of them does, and show some examples there as well. And thanks to Jack John Jackson for helping me out with this. And make sure you do hit subscribe. Our aim is to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of November. There's going to be a link down in the comments for you to be able to do that. So first of all, this is our color pie. You can see here that each of the colors, so white, black, blue, green, and red, all have different things to kind of do with them. So like take for example white here, they've got like uncreative here, peace, lore, about order, laws of man, morality, laws of God, and spirit. So a whole lot of their stuff will have to do with like those core kind of tenets there. So I'll talk about what that means in regards to gameplay, but you can see the ones that are next to them. So say for example white and blue work well together, they're like allies, while stuff like white and red is more like seen as opposites. However, just because they are opposites on the color chart does not mean that they don't work well together. Like white black have some really incredible decks together, white red have incredible decks together. Every color combination has incredible decks that work well together. It's just more in the lore they're kind of seen as opposites. Like say for example white here is all about order and morality and stuff, while red is about impulse and chaos and freedom and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of kind of differences between them, and there's like, you know, they're kind of tied into the lore as well as you can see it in the gameplay too. So how do you even know what a color identity of a card is? So before we get into it, a Arwen, for example, here, you can see her color identity up in the top right where it is showing her mana cost. This is going to be her color identity. So you can see her here, her color identity is going to be a green and white. So she is going to be a green-white card, and then she's got one colorless. So typically the borders will also be able to tell you. So you can see here her border is green with white here. If it's dual color, it's going to be split like that. If it's a single color, the whole border will just be, you know, a single color, or just be all green or something like that. And if it's 3 or above, then it's going to typically be the kind of orangey browny kind of color that they've got, like yellowy color that, you know, you'll see on some cards later on. You've also got to keep in mind the creature's abilities. So you can see here, this Kenrith here, while his color identity up the top is just white and colorless, you can also see down here that he has other important stuff to keep in mind. So you know, you've got the red in here, you've got the green, you've got the white, you've got the blue and the black. These are a part of his color identity as well. They are going to be important when you play Commander, because this is how you decide what cards you can have in your deck. For example, Arwen here, you can only have, if she is your commander, green or white cards. That's going to be very important, because if you have something that's not in there, then you know your deck's not official. You can have colorless stuff as well. If you've got colorless artifacts or any colorless spells or something, you can include those in there too. Typically, colorless spells aren't probably going to be worth it, but artifacts, definitely, you should be including them. If you have Kenrith as your commander, you can only include white if you completely ignore his ability. However, it's going to be able to, you're able to include every color because it's got the symbols. The symbols is what is important. Because of the fact that he's got the white, red, green, white again, blue and black, his color identity is all of the colors. That means that you can include every single color in his deck if he is your commander. The other thing to keep in mind is that it specifically has to have the color symbol. The color symbols is what you're looking for. If it just says, you know, if it just says green, if it just says red or something like that, that is not a part of their color identity. If you've got something that summons like, you know, blue, black fairies or something, unless it has the symbol there, it is not a part of that card's identity. So it's something to kind of keep in mind that's important. So let's get into the actual meat of it. So first we'll start off with the monocolored ones. So colorless first, the absence of color. I wanted to cover this one at the very start here because not everything is tied to a color. You can see, like for example, artifacts. The Eldrazi, which is a race that were the villains back in the like Eldrazi battles and stuff like that. The spirits as well. Some of them are completely colorless, and equipment is kind of half and half. Some of it's just completely colorless equipment, while some of it is tied to certain like color identities. So same with artifacts and stuff. So here's some examples of some legendary commanders. So I'm going to be mostly focusing on commanders. So I'm talking about big like legendary creatures, but this is going to apply for other decks as well. So you can see here like the Liberator Urza's Battlethrop, that's got to do with colorless spells, artifact spells, whenever you cast a spell. And if you don't know, in Magic the Gathering, spells are any cards, like any of your creatures are spells as well. Any of your instant sorceries, they're all spells. So whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of, it's basically anything except for lands. If the amount of mana spent to cast a spell is greater than him, you get a +1/+1. But you can see here, he's got ties to artifacts and stuff. I cannot pronounce his name. The Void Gorger here has to do with colorless spells overall. He's like the Eldrazi big leader dude there. And you've got Khan over here, who has to do with artifacts. And then you've got some other stuff. So you've got like the All Is Dust to tie into Eldrazi there. You've got the Steel Overseer here, who's an artifact creature and has to do with all artifact creatures. The Alamat's Archive here, which is whenever you gain life, you gain twice that much instead. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of ties in across the different sets, like artifacts typically being colorless and kind of all tie in together and work well together in artifact creature decks. You know, there's lots of different types of artifacts as well. Like, you know, there's some that are just mana rocks that are just going to create you more mana and everything. And then there's some that are more, for example, like, you know, actual creatures and stuff. So first color I've got here is white. So they're about life gain, a lot of life gain stuff in there. You've got a lot of enchantments to kind of buff up your creatures and stuff. You've got vigilance as well. So even though they attack, they're not going to tap. So then you're able to defend with them too. Some creature token stuff. So going wide and chucking out a whole bunch of creature tokens, especially like humans or angels, that kind of stuff. They've got stuff to do with exile. So exiling enemy cards is one of their kind of like, their instants are really great for exiling cards, like Swords to Plowshares is a very key card. And then you've got +1/+1 counters, so buffing up your creatures with those too. So here's some legendary creatures that you might see. So you've got Abdel here, who has to do with like whenever things get exiled, then he's going to be able to create some soldiers there. You've got Light Paws here, who's all about auras and buffing up and enchantments and stuff. And then you've got Gaida over here to do with your angels and +1/+1 counters as well. So some spells you might see, Swords to Plowshares, to exile a creature. It does give life equal to that creature to the whoever you exile it from. However, it's, you know, it's a very quick spell that you can cast. You've got Soul's Attendant here, which is a human cleric, which whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you can gain life, which is really nice. Or Brave the Sands over here, giving your creatures vigilance, and each time you control, each creature you control can block an additional creature each combat. So you've got blue. Blue is a lot about card draw and counterspelling and tapping and untapping cards. You've got a lot of instants and sorceries here and artifacts. So a lot of kind of spell stuff, a lot of kind of like interacting with enemies on their turn. Blue is very much people's... okay, I'm going to probably say this. Blue is probably the color identity that people are least favorite, like the least, because of the fact that it can like stop you in your tracks kind of thing. So some different like commanders that you've got here. So you've got like Baron here, who's whenever he enters the battlefield, you can return up to one other target creature or planeswalker to that owner's hand. And then at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand, you get to draw a card. You've got Telrand here. Whenever you cast an instance or sorcery, create a blue Drake. You've got the Urza over here creating some artifact stuff, and then you can tap your artifacts to create mana too. And then you get to shuffle your library and then exile the top card and be able to play it for free. Some spells here. You've got Counterspell, This is like a key card here. There are so many different types of counterspell. You know, there's ones that will make it so that your enemy has to pay extra to be able to cast it. There's some that are like, you know, counter it and put it back into their deck. Like there's lots of different stuff there. You've got Ancestral Recall here. Target, I actually don't know if you can put it back into the deck. I think there's something similar to that. You've got Ancestral Recall, to just make someone draw 3 cards. And then you've got like Hullbreaker Horror here that can't be counted. And then whenever you cast a spell, you get to do some different stuff, like returning target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or returning a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So returning cards back to people's hands with the Hullbreaker Horror there. So black is about discarding, playing from your graveyard, whether that's bringing stuff back from your graveyard or being able to just play cards from your graveyard. You've got evasion, so that's like being able to basically still hit your opponent, but they can't block it. So stuff like flying or stuff like fear or menace, those kinds of things are kind of heavy in black. You've got sacrificing, so sacrificing your own stuff, damaging yourself to get stuff. So like, you know, it might be, this is just an example card, I don't know if it exists or not. You could, you know, damage yourself for 3 life to draw 2 cards or something like that. You've got Death Touch, which means that whenever a creature that you've got with Death Touch deals damage to an opponent, to a opponent's creature, it will kill them no matter what, unless they've got like, you know, some kind of protection from it. Even if you don't, you know, completely reduce them down to 0 health, they're still going to be able to do that. And then you've also got Poison, so being able to stack up poison counters in Commander, and I think it's the same in non-Commander. If you get to 10 poison, you lose the game. Whether you've got, you know, 40 health left or not, you still, once you get to that 10 poison counters, you lose the game. So some creatures you've got here, Imhotep. Imhotep is like key black. This is black. This is the blackest black you'll ever get. Whenever an artifact creature, artifact card leaves your graveyard, you get to create some tokens, and then you can also buff your creatures up at the start of combat. Well, one creature, artifact creature up with +2/+2 and menace. You've got Rankle over here. Whenever he deals combat damage to someone, you can choose any number of that force that person to discard. Sorry, each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card, or each player sacrifices a card. And then you've got Ayara over here. Whenever her or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent's going to lose life and you gain life. And then you've got the option of sacrificing black creatures to draw cards. Some cards that you've got in here. So you've got like Thoughtseize here. Target a player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards it, and you lose 2 life. You've got Kitchen Imp here with flying and haste. And then you've got Madness. If you discard it into exile. And then when you do, you cast it for its madness cost. So it's just going to sit over there in exile. And then Entomb. Go through your library, find a card, put it into your graveyard, and then shuffle your library. That's a very interesting card because it allows you, it's like a tutor. If you don't know what a tutor is, basically, you know, being able to go through your deck and find a card that you want. This does that, except it puts it into your graveyard instead. So you've got red. Red is about card drawing, but usually with the option, well, not option, the forced discarding. So you like, you know, draw 2 cards and then discard 1 or something like that. You've got combat, a lot of combat based stuff in red. You've got haste, so, you know, being able to attack the first turn that card comes out. Non-combat damage, so burn, like cards that, like, you know, deal 3 damage to target player, deal 3 damage to this, deal 3, like that kind of, those kinds of spells. You've got buffing up the power of creatures, so, you know, giving like +3 power, so then, you know, they become like a 7/2 or something like that, and all of a sudden, you know, it doesn't usually buff up their toughness as well, just their power. You've got exile play, so a lot of cards recently in red have been about putting cards into exile and then playing them later, or, you know, being able to play them in immediately or stuff like that. And then also temporary mana, so they'll have spells that, you know, give a whole bunch of mana that you have to spend straight away because it's temporary. So some creatures you've got in here, you've got Urabrask here. All your creatures have haste. Creatures your opponent control enter tap. So a little bit of control in there, but giving all your creatures haste. You've got Furfurus here, making it so that whenever another creature enters the battlefield, he's going to deal 2 damage to each opponent. Creatures you control get +1/+0. So that's what I was talking about with like the buffing up power. You can buff up your power with that. And then you've got Atali here, who's all about combat. But when you deal damage to someone, you're going to exile the top card of each player's library, and then you can play those for free. Atali is bonkers. Some spells here. You've got Jessica's Will here, being able to give yourself a whole bunch of temporary mana, exile the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you're going to be able to play any of them. Wheel of Misfortune here, making it so that everyone kind of has to discard their... deals damage to players or make people discard their hand and then draw cards. This is a really fun card. And then you got Terror of the Peaks here, about, you know, dealing damage to anyone when another creature enters the battlefield when you're on your side. You've got green. So green is about mana ramp, it's about lands, it's about artifact and enchantment destruction. You've got some creature tokens in there, so like beasts and like some like bears and stuff like that. Temporary buffs, so like giving something +3/+3, that kind of stuff. You've got trample as well, which means that whenever something with trample deals damage to something, any additional damage will then go through to their owner. You've got death touch, a little bit of death touch within green too, and then you've got counters, so that's like +1/+1 counters, or, you know, poison counters as well in there. There's some creatures in here. You've got like Vorinclex, who's like green upon green. He's got trample, he's got reach, he's going to find you some forests to put them into the battlefield, to put them into your hand, and then you can also exile him and transform him there. You've got Aeola here, chucking up +1/+1s, or making your bears fight other bears. You've got Jolrael over here, creating some cat tokens, then also buffing up their base power and toughness. Some spells. Kadama's Reach is like a very green spell. Go get 2 mana, 2 lands from in your deck, chuck one of them onto the battlefield tapped, 1 into your hand. You've got Birds of Paradise here, so he's going to be able to give you mana just by tapping him. Really nice. And then you've got Larger for Life, which is like one of those temporary buffs I was talking about before. Give +4/+4, and then trample as well to something. So these are dual colored. So they're named after the guilds on Ravnica, which is one of the planes. So Ravnica has a whole bunch of guilds. Each of these basically pull their name from the guilds, which is like dual-colored guilds. So for example, like, you know, Azorius is a guild. So white-blue. White-blue has a lot of stuff to do with flying. So angels, birds, that kind of stuff. You've got tapping, so tapping your own stuff, tapping enemy stuff, preventing attacks and blocks. You've got counters in here as well, +1/+1 counters and stuff. And then flicker and blink. Flicker and blink is basically, you know, taking a card that you've got on the battlefield, putting it into exile, and then bringing it back immediately. Now, that might sound silly because, you know, why would you do that? There is multiple different reasons you could do that. For example, like proccing enter the battlefield effects another time. That's a key one there. Or, you know, preventing damage from stuff. There's a lot of cool things you can do with that. So some white-blue here, you've got Ranar here, who's about, you know, flying and vigilance, exiling cards from your hand, and permanents from the battlefield create a 1/1. So whenever you exile things, you create some tokens there, and you want to be doing that often if you're doing a flicker deck. And then you've got like Foretell here, which means that, you know, you're going to exile a card to play it later, so that's going to proc it too. Guys of the Saint Traft here with hexproof, and then whenever your attacks, creating angels with with flying that are tapped and attacking, and then exile that token at the end. You've got Ojutai over here. Whenever dragon you control taps, you get to tap a target non-land permanent an opponent controls, and then doesn't untap on the next turn. Some spells here, you've got like Ojutai's Command here. So typically these charms kind of show you a few different things that they're going to be doing within that combo. So the Azorius Charm, for example, here gives a lifelink, or draw a card, or put a attacking or blocking creature onto the top of its owner's field. Or there's Ojutai's Command here, gain life, return creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield, counter a spell, or draw a card. So blue-black is dimmer, that is milling, a lot of milling cards in here, some card draw as well, playing from graveyard to big creatures with some big drawbacks, and then you've got goad in here too. So some like commanders here. You've got Captain Nagarthrod here. He's going to give your horrors menace. Whenever a horror you control deals damage to a player, you're going to mill cards from them, and then you can play, you can choose something from someone's graveyard and put it onto the battlefield under your control. You've got LLR here, whenever you cast a card during an opponent's turn, creating these fairies as well as goading creatures as well. And then Will Helt with the zombies there. Whenever a zombie you control dies, you get to create another zombie, and then you can also sacrifice them to draw cards. Some spells here, Drown in the Lock, counter spells, and then to do with your graveyard as well, or destroy creatures to do with your graveyard. And then you've got the Dimmer Charm here, counter target sorcery spell, or destroy the target creature with power 2 or less. Or look at the top 3 cards of a target's player's library, then put one back and then one into the graveyard, the rest in the graveyard. So you can use that on yourself to kind of put cards into your graveyard, kind of like a scry with extra steps or like a surveil, I think it is. You've got black red with this Rakdos about haste, direct damage as well, so burn. You've got life loss here, damaging yourself, and then you've got plus X minus X, so buffing up the power of creatures and reducing their health, and then sacrifice as well, and then demons and devils. So you've got Raphael buffing up your demons and devils, Rakdos giving your creatures one less to cast for each life your opponent's lost, and then the Balrog here being able to sacrifice things with it, costing less if you've sacrificed things, and then it can't be blocked by the legendaries. When it dies, destroy target stuff that opponents control. A couple of different spells here. I've got to go quicker. We've got Gruul with big units, trample, haste. You've got land removal here as well, fast mana, fighting. So like that's like, choosing 2 creatures to make them fight, usually to benefit yourself or to take them out or something. You've got a whole bunch of token stuff in here, just destruction overall. There's a lot of different destruction in here. So Felrond here is casting stuff from exile and then discarding cards. You've got Atraka here with extra double strike, flying, trample. You've got Helena here buffing up with your creatures of giving +1/+1 tokens. Decimate, just destroy everything, destroy like an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land. And then we've got Gruul over here, making it so that creatures without flying can't block or gain control of all permanents you own, or it deals 3 damage to each creature with flying. So lots of cool stuff there. Celestina, vigilance, tokens. We've got protection in here too, so protecting your own stuff. A whole bunch of life gain enchantments as well, with a little bit of enchantment removal from green too. Buffing as well, buffing up your creatures, and then you've got ramp stuff in here. So some creatures in here you've got like Scythus here, who is whenever you cast an enchantment, gain life and draw cards. You've got Trelestla here, whenever you gain life, put +1/+1 onto it, or Glunch, put +1/+1s onto creatures that enemies control, and then choose someone to draw a card, and then choose player to create. This is a really nice group hug deck. It's really nice. So then you've got some other spells here, Aura Mutilation here, destroying enhancements, or you've got like the Celestina Charm, giving buffs to your creatures, or even creating an extra token there. Orzhos with lifelink aristocrats is heavy in there, returning creatures from your graveyard to life gain, a whole bunch of vampire stuff. So Teysa there, making it so that you're on death, trigger an additional time, giving vigilance and lifelink. Carmen, making it so that whenever you sacrifice something, buffer up and gain life. Or Amalia, whenever you gain life, explore, and then when she gets to 20, then you're going to be able to destroy all other creatures. Some spells, so you've got like life insurance, making it so that whenever something dies, then you're going to lose life and create treasures, so damaging yourself to gain treasures. But obviously you got a lot of lifelink stuff in here too. Orzhos Charm, return creature you control and all auras attached to it to their hand, so saving your own creatures or destroy creatures and losing life equal to it, or return creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield. You got Izzet here, all about spell slinging, copying spells as well. So like, you cast a spell and then you get to copy it to cast it again, or changing the targets of spells, so redirecting them, getting extra turns too, or a whole bunch of artifact stuff, especially recently. So some stuff in here, like you got Mizez here about instants and sorceries. You've got Jahora about is the historic spells, so that's artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, and then Nagel there as well about casting sorceries as though it had flash, paying 2, and then being able to copy spells too. Witch Slap, counter stuff, and then deal damage to their controller, or is it charm here? Counter stuff, deal damage, or draw cards. And you can see there, that's draw cards and then discards charged, so you can see like the blue-red kind of both interacting there. Golgari, about death touch, about +1/+1 counters, resurrecting stuff, a lot of land destruction too, and lots of really small tokens. Like there's fungi in here, there's a whole bunch of different fungi in there. So Merrin is whenever another creature you control dies, put an experience counter on her, and then you can choose stuff in your graveyard to return back to the field. Or you can return to the field, or you can put it into your hand. You've got Gitrog Monster here. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice him unless you sacrifice a land, and then you can play additional lands there. A lot of different land stuff. You can also, whenever the lands enter the graveyard from your field, you can draw cards. And then Shelob about the ward and about the spiders and stuff. And then whenever another creature dealt damage with her dies, then you get to create food tokens, which is really interesting. Well, you actually turn it into a food token. Which is really cool because like it's a way to be able to stop the enemy from creating like having their commander out, because if Shelob kills him, then you're going to turn that into a food token, which is really interesting. So we've got Tend the Pest here, sacrifice a creature, create a whole bunch of pests, and then when they die you create gain life. So you can see there the combination of red sacrifice, the black sacrificing stuff, and then the green kind of gaining life, as well as, you know, getting a whole bunch of different little dudes. Giving +1/-1 with a Golgari charm, or destroy enchantments, or regenerate a creature you control. We've got Boros here about fire, first strike, double strike, a whole bunch of small tokens and stuff, bonuses for attacking too. You've got protection on attacking, so being able to keep your stuff protected, as well as there's a lot of different equipment stuff in Boros. So Nahiri and Astor are both about equipment very heavily. Astor being able to find equipment, Nahiri being able to exile the top card and then play it for free. You've got Aurelia here about additional combat phases, as well as having like flying and vigilance there. And then some spells there, like a lot of different equipment stuff is to do with Boros here. So this one here, you can unattach it. Like you can throw it, like deal 4 down, like give it +4/+0, and then you can spend this to unattach it and then search your library for a white or red instant card to be able to play it for free, and then shuffle your library. And then you've got the Boros charm here, which deals 4 damage, or gives you all your permanents indestructible, or gives your target creature double strike. You've got Simic, which, you know, my friends absolutely hate Simic. You've got a lot of hexproof in here. You've got card draw as well, +1/+1 counters. Merfolk too, like Merfolk are very heavily Simic. You've got land manipulation, so, you know, being able to turn your lands into creatures and stuff like that. You've got searching your library too for stuff there, and also creature copying. So, you know, you got Huckbal. Huckbal is about as Simic comes, because not only is it going to give your creatures buffs with the Explore, but it's also going to, you know, ramp you up. You've got Lonus over here, sacrificing clues and then be able to find stuff from the enemy deck and stuff. And then you've got Volo here being able to copy spells, which is really nice. Simic Ascendancy, give +1/+1, and then you can win the game if you've got 20 or more on it. And then Simic Charm here, giving +3/+3 to one thing, giving hexproof to permanents, or return the target creature to its owner's hand. So then we've got the tricolors. So this video is a bit long, sorry, but, you know, there's a lot of different kind of cover here. So the tricolor stuff are named after either the shards of Alara or the clans of Tarkir. They're two different things, two different planes, but, you know, they're kind of all gain their names from either one of those two. So you've got Bant to start with, is about Exalted. So Exalted is bonuses for when you attack alone. So like you'll have one creature that will have Exalted. It gains damage whenever it attacks alone. You've got counter stuff in here. You've got ramp, and you've got defensive and control. So one thing to keep in mind with the 3-color stuff is it's usually primarily one color. So you've got here primarily white for Bant, and then minor of the other 2 colors to kind of support that one. So, you know, you can kind of take the best stuff of white and then add in a little bit of green, add in a little bit of blue to kind of buff it up. So here we've got like Chulane over here. Whenever you cast a creature, draw a card, and then you can put a land onto the battlefield from your thing. But then you've also got the returning the target creature you control to its owner's hand. So, you know, being able to like put things back and keep them protected. Rafik of the Many with the Exalted, as well as whenever a creature you attack, whenever you creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike. So that like plays into the Exalted as well. And then you've got the Arcades here, making it so that, you know, you're protected. You've got the Defender stuff, and then you've got, you know, your walls and stuff will deal damage equal to their toughness rather than their power. And then you got the Bant Charm. So destroy target artifact. So each of these, I'm only going to put one spell up there. You've got Bant Charm, destroy target artifact, put a creature on the bottom of its owner's library, or counter the target instant spell. So you've got Esper, primarily blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of white here. So that's about control, a lot of artifact stuff in here too. So kind of like, you know, you've got your white and black artifacts and with a bit of white artifacts in there too. Life gain as well. Enchantments, it's heavily in Esper, and then some discarding stuff too. So, you know, you got Urza here with the artifact stuff and kind of creating artifacts and everything. You got Alela over here giving you stuff flying, as well as whenever you cast artifacts or enchantments, creating some fairies. And then we've got Chromium over here, making it so that he can't be counted and stuff, but he discards a card and then he becomes a human 1/1, loses his abilities and gains hexproof. So there's ways to be able to kind of work around stuff that's going to potentially damage him with that. And then you got the Esper Charm here, destroy enchantment, draw 2 cards, or make someone discard cards. Grixis, about card draw, about spell slinging, about graveyard play, and about discard and milling. So you got Sauron, making it so, you know, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you get to amass 1. Whenever an army you control deals combat damage, the ring tempts you, so it's stuff to do with the rings, and then you can discard your hand to draw more cards. Kess, again, about instants and sorceries, and then Be'lakor about demons and drawing cards and dealing damage, kind of like not spell slinging, but like non-combat burn damage. And then the Grixis Charm here, returning creatures to their return and target permanent to its owner's hand, give -4, or buffing up your creatures. So you got Jund about removal, sacrificing, land destruction, haste, and then also group hugs with downsides. So you've got like Henzi to be able to cheat stuff out with Blitz. You got Yurlok about group hugging, giving everyone some mana, but then they're going to kind of take damage if they don't spend that mana. And then you've got Korvold over here to whenever he attacks or enters the battlefield, you've got to sacrifice something, and then whenever you sacrifice something, give +1/+1 and draw a card. And then the Jund Charm, exile all cards from a player's graveyard, or deal 2 damage to each creature, or put +1/+1, 2 +1/+1s on a target creature. Naya is about tokens, about wide buffs, about animal tribals, a lot of tap and untap stuff, and then you've also got library to battlefield effects here too. So, for example, you've got Rin and Sarah here, all about, you know, creating a whole bunch of tokens with the cats and the dogs, as well as dealing damage to people equal to the number of dogs you control, and then gaining life equal to the number of cats you control. Gishash, being able to cheat out your dinos. And then Rocco here, whenever he enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you can search your library for creature cards with mana value X, because you pay X to be able to play him, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. So cheating out stuff with both of those two. Then you've got the Naya Charm here. Tap all creatures a player controls, deal 3 damage to a target creature, or return a target card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. Abzan, about graveyard play. Toxic as well. You've got keyword counters, so flying, vigilance, etc. Being able to give flying to stuff, being able to give vigilance to stuff. You got death touch you can chuck out, and then you got tapping stuff. So Cathril, whenever it enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on a creature if you've got on any creature you control, if a creature you control has flying. So like being able to spread out all your keywords. So if you've got something that's flying, you can put a flying on something else. If you've got something that's got lifelink, put lifelink on something else, etc. Then put +1/+1s on him equal to each counter put on a creature this way. You got Nethroi here, making it so that you can mutate, returning creatures with power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then Is Hell over here, making it so you've got the corrupted, giving the poison count, doing additional stuff if people have the poison counters. Abzan Charm, exile a creature with 3 or greater power, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or distribute 2 +1/+1s among 1 or 2 creatures. Jeskai, about prowess, so you cast a non-creature, you get a +1/+1/+1. So, working into that blue kind of spell slinging with the Izzet spell slinging as well, like the blue-red spell slinging, and then with a little bit of white there to be able to kind of make it like the wider buffs and stuff. You've got the cost reduction too here. So, Jeskai, you've got, Jeskai, Kelsa. Whenever you cast another spell, you convoke, and then you can scry that has convoke. You scry 2 and then draw a card. You've got Hinata here. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target. So if you're targeting a whole bunch of stuff, then it's going to make it so that it costs less, but also making it so that your opponent's stuff costs more. And then Narset here, whenever she attacks, you're going to exile target non-creature, non-land with mana value less than her from the graveyard, and then you get to copy it as well. And then the Jeskai charm here, putting creature back onto the top of its opponent's library. Jeskai also dealing 4 damage to the target. Also choosing, you can choose one of these. Deal 4 damage or get +1/+1 lifelink until for all your creatures. The Sultai, about mutating, so all about the red, the black with a little bit of green and blue. Mutate, you've got Death Touch in here too, obviously. You've got Draw Manipulation as well coming in from the blue. You've got Copying Creatures too from all 3. And then you've got the Graveyard Creatures and Ramp. So here's some options here. So the Mimoplasm, whenever it enters, you exile 2 creatures from graveyards. If you do, it enters the battlefield as a copy of one of those creatures with a number of additional +1/+1s on it equal to the power of the other creature, which is really interesting. You got Muldroth, the Gravetide here. You can play a land on during each of your turns. You may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard, which is really nice. So you can play stuff from your graveyard. And then Otrimi, the ever playful here with Trample, and whenever you deal combat damage to a player, return a target creature with Mutate from your graveyard to your hand. So a lot of Mutate stuff there. The Sultai Charm, deal destroy target monocolored creature, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or draw 2 cards and then discard a card. We've got Mardu, wide aggro with buffing it up as well. You got token generation in here as well, especially like Boris has a lot of token generation. You got a lot of token generation between the 3 of here, creating and reviving, revive attacking. You got attack triggers in here too, as well as tribal banners and benefits. So you got Kalia of the Vast. Whenever she attacks, you can put an angel, demon, or dragon from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking that opponent, which is really nice. You get to play an additional card. You got Ishan here. Whenever a target attacking creature triggered ability from attacking, then you get to trigger an additional time. Or Sir Gwyn here. Whenever a equipped creature you control attacks, you could draw a card and then you lose 1 life. And then equipment you control has equipped Knight 0, so you can equip stuff to Knights for free. And then the Mardu charm here. Deal 4 damage to a target, create some tokens, or make someone reveal their hand, and then you get to discard a card from it that's a non-creature, non-land. So we've got Tema here, all about Cascade. You've got a lot of draw stuff in here. There's many different play styles across this one. You've got spell counter spells and ward effects as well. A lot of different commander stuff in here. You've got the high mana cost cards as well. So because you've got you've got the green blue Simic here to get the high mana cost out, as well as the red for all the temporary mana. It's okay that there's like high mana cost stuff in here. So Miram, I can talk about Miran for a whole freaking video, but he is being able to create a whole bunch of extra dragons as well, being able to create that ward and stuff. You got the Magus over here, putting a +1/+1 at the beginning of combat, and then you can also tap it to create stuff and then cast spells for free with, cast spells with that, and then copy the spells, and then the Maelstrom Wanderer here with a lot of Cascade. And then the Tema Charm here, giving +1/+1 to a target creature you control that's fighting, and then force it to fight someone. You've got Counterspell unless someone pay 3, and then creatures with power 3 or less can't block this turn. So the 4 color stuff. Generally, only 1 or 2 commanders for each that determine the play style of it. Alternatively, there's 2 duo commanders that you could potentially bring in. So like, with partner and stuff, bring in, 2 commanders here, and then you can kind of mix their play styles and synergize them well that way. They're named after the OG Nephilim cards that feature those 4 cards. They're 4 colors. So like originally there was like a Yordle, a Nephilim. So, each of them has like a different play style, and you generally just want to match the play style here. Like Aragorn, it's about playing different spells from all the different stuff. You got Saskia here, who's about whenever you deal damage to a player, then it's going to copy onto that player. Lots of different stuff across them, like Proliferate from Atraxa. There's lots of different play styles that's going to basically determine what your deck is around, but you can pull from the 4 different colors. So like Aragorn here, you can pull in, the red and green, the green kind of ramp there, and then the temporary buffs from red to be able to kind of, deal damage additionally. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of build each of these 4 deck commanders. It's going to be a bit harder to be able to play your mana stuff out and stuff like that, because it takes a bit more to be able to have the proper mana that, depending on what you're going and which direction you go. However, you've got a few different options in here. And then 5 color, very unique and very tricky kind of play styles here. They're non-standard tribals, so like slivers, for example, and then slivers all share keywords, and then the unique artifact creatures in here too. So like, you've got Joda here, who's all about like legendaries matter and doing legendaries and stuff. You got the first sliver here about Cascade, and then giving all your sliver spells Cascade. The Dragon about all dragons, different dragons pulling from all the other dragons and stuff. Tom Bombadil about sagas, and then Cody about playing non-permanents, which is interesting. Like you can't play can't cast permanent spells while it's out. So lots of really cool stuff you can potentially do with these ones. So off color. So while most commanders and cards will fit within those color combos, some will break the color wheel and do different things. They can these could create completely different decks. So like, a deck that's completely about something different. Like I'll show you one in a minute. Or they can just add stuff into a deck that you've got that's a bit more niche to be able to catch people off guard. Sometimes they're referred to as color bleed when they're like slightly changing, color bending when they're changing more, or color breaking when it's completely different. Colors also change over time. Like some of the stuff changes a little bit over time as the game is developed more. So some of the older cards you find, they may be like, having the identity slightly different to what you're kind of used to. So, for example, you got Norindar here, who is a character who is very much about lands matter. You want a whole bunch of lands out and stuff, but you'll notice that he has no green in him. So if you're running him as a commander, then, you've got the fact that he's all about lands, he's all about buffing up your lands and stuff, but you don't have that green to be able to chuck lands out. So there's lots of different stuff that you've got to kind of, adapt there. You've got Wart the Raid Mother here about, red and green instants. So while red is very much about, instants and sorceries and stuff and being able to chuck them out and stuff, green is not so much known for that. Or you've got Felden of the Third Path over here, who's about, reanimating stuff from your graveyard, giving it haste, and, the haste and stuff, that's very much red, but the reanimation and graveyard play is not so much about red. But that's it for today, guys. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you think I've got everything right or something like that, if you feel free to correct me down below. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. Make sure you do subscribe, and that's it for today. Have a great day and goodbye.